Hello one and all, this is Matt from New Game Plus, and we have one hell of a preview for you. With special thanks to Capcom, we've managed to play and share our thoughts about the latest version of the Resident Evil 2 remake due to come out next year. Since we are so close to the game hitting store shelves, it is quite likely that what we played will closely reflect that of the final build, and if that's any indication, it's safe to say that we have something truly special to look forward to next January. If you've been out of the gaming loop, Resident Evil 2 was a smash hit with critics and gamers alike when it hit the original PlayStation back in 1998. Seemingly releasing just in time for its 20th anniversary, Capcom's team have reimagined the story of Leon Kennedy and Claire Redfield from the ground up as they plan their perilous escape from the zombie-infested Raccoon City. While many are referring to this game as a remake, it won't exactly be fit for one-to-one comparisons with the original PlayStation classic. Visual upgrades aside, there are some neat tweaks and overhaul of the mechanics that will help the remake stand on its own 2 feet. It all starts with the narrative and how it's presented compared to the original. The remake opts for a full campaign rather than segregating the characters to their respective mode, and while you still play as Leon and Claire, each character has their own distinct style of play. Leon feels a lot more at home exploring at a slower pace, which is accentuated through all the puzzles that you solve, while Claire tends to prefer old-fashioned Redfield Brawn, as she faces more bosses and larger hordes of zombies. There are some parts where you play as other characters like Ada Wong for example, that vary playstyles and conditions even further. And while we would have loved to have spent more time on it, this might be a good choice for pacing's sake, but I guess we'll get a better idea once the full game ships. As is the case with most remakes, there are plenty of little nods and Easter eggs for long-running fans, such as checking out Kendo's gun shop, the infamous scenes against the mutant alligator, the interrogation room, and plenty more. One of my personal favourites included being chased by Mr. X throughout RPD Station. In an attempt to elude him, I ran towards one of the first save rooms in the game. You know, the one with the dark room for developing film and the costume-changing lockers. With my handgun trained at the door waiting for an attack, I waited several seconds and concluded that enemies don't actually appear to be programmed to follow the player beyond that point. And while that might not strike a chord with new players, it is clear that Capcom still have the original fans such as myself in mind regarding the setting and even the mechanics. Speaking of, some of the core components of most survival horror games include scavenging for items, working with limited space, as well as holding and using the right items at the right time. The remake of Resident Evil 2 gives you a few tools to work with, like the classic item boxes, which help you stow away key items or stockpile herbs and ammunition. Cool little details like seeing items you don't pick up get marked on the area map for future reference. So for example, if you're poisoned and you're in need of a blue herb and happen to run past one a few minutes before, all of that is handily recorded within the menu similar to that of Resident Evil Zero's inventory management. To continue the trend of inspired mechanics from previous games, you're able to use sub-weapons like knives and grenades as defense items made popular by the Resident Evil remake from GameCube, and these help you give a little more flexibility in battle. And while you can use them by themselves aggressively, you can also use them defensively too. A button prompt generally appears when you're grabbed by an enemy, and if you choose to do so, you'll use up that item without taking damage. I also dug the fact that if you shoot down an enemy and find a knife dug into it, you can take it out and reuse it for as long as the durability lasts. There's even a nod to Resident Evil 3, where gunpowder can be found and used around Raccoon City, with different combinations producing different types of ammo for particular weapons, though one of the more interesting changes involves herbs. Mixing green and red herbs produce the same result as they always have, though the latest ability is being able to mix red herbs and blue herbs to produce what appears to be a physical defense buff, and it will really change up the overall versatility of blue herbs, which to many original players were just used to cure poison. All in all, a lot of these throwback components to the old Resident Evil games feel like a neat amalgamation of core concepts introduced to the Resident Evil series over the course of its 20-year reign as a pioneer of the survival horror genre. That said, there are a few concerns worth noting. Even the most basic of enemies in this game are total bullet sponges, so if you're a player that's overly reliant on critical headshots, which in my experience playing the game was quite scarce, or hoping that enemies stagger so that you can run past, your ammunition might not last, especially when you're fending off tougher enemies like lickers or if you're fighting in a boss battle. To add to that, gun upgrades are stripped back to just finding parts in the area and combining them within the menu, rather than tweaking of individual attributes popularized by games like Resident Evil 4 or Resident Evil 5. And while that may seem regressive, given all of the other mechanics from other Resident Evil games made the cut, there is a chance that more in-depth customization comes up later in the game, as we only managed to play a brief segment. Despite those quirks, the remake of Resident Evil 2 is shaping up to signal a great start for gaming in 2019, as it's scheduled for a January 25th release date on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. For more games, news, reviews, guides, and interviews, be sure to like this video and subscribe to us here at youtube.com/NewGamePlusTV. Thank you very much for watching.